Have you been experiencing internal financial struggles triggered by economic concerns? Are you feeling capped at your current income level and can't seem to realize your financial potential? Energy healer Jean Border has created an emotional freedom technique, or EFT, tapping protocol to help calm the inner voice that keeps you stressed. Claim your free copy at jeanborder.com/vow and say goodbye to those financial blockages. Welcome to another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Jean Border. It's not just about dreaming, it's about making those dreams a practical reality. Subscribe to us via your favorite network by visiting our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com. Now, get ready. Your journey to success starts here.
Hello, everyone. It's your host, Jean Border, with another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, where we talk everything business with a focus on energy, mindset, and psychology, and how those impact not only your personal life, but also your business decisions. I have a special guest with me here today, Tina Baxter. Hi, Tina.
Hello.
Hi. But before we go there, let me remind everybody there's a free resource for you if you're in a little bit of financial distress, or if you have some big decisions coming up regarding your money or your financial situation. It's probably best to make decisions from a place of calm rather than a place of fear or tension. And there's a free EFT tapping protocol in the show notes below, or if you're just listening, it's jeanborder.com/vow, VOW. Just do a few rounds of tapping, calm down your central nervous system so that you can make good, calm decisions versus reactionary, fear-based decisions. And let me know how it goes for you. And now, on to the show. This is Tina Baxter, and she's got a long history with, I'm going to say, the healthcare industry. Hi, Tina. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So tell the listeners a little bit about you and where you're coming from and where you are now in your business.
Okay. Well, I am a nurse practitioner. I still practice clinically full time, but I also have my own business where I teach and train CNAs, home health aides. I just got finished doing a TB training right before I hopped on here. And I also help nurses build and launch their own businesses through the Nurse Shark Academy. And so I've been in healthcare for over 25 years, starting out as a lab tech, became a CNA, worked as a registered nurse, then became a nurse practitioner, and now nurse entrepreneur.
Cool. So talk to me a little bit about how you got from being a nurse to starting your own business. What did that look like for you, and what made you decide to do that?
Well, as I like to say, I was an accidental on purpose entrepreneur. So when I started in nursing school, I needed to make extra cash as a college student, right? Typical broke college student. So someone suggested that I learn how to teach CPR classes. And so that's what I did. I strictly did this as a side hustle. I learned how to teach CPR classes, and I started just doing it for churches and things like that. Then corporate clients would call me in, doctor's offices and say, hey, can you come and do our training for us? So I did. Never thought about turning that into a business. It was strictly side hustle. Well, went to grad school after working as a nurse on the floor and in the hospitals and things. And I went to grad school. I got my master's in education. And during that process, when I got my first job as a nurse practitioner, I found myself in between jobs. I left this position. I didn't have a job. And I was thinking about writing a book. And I had a friend who was starting a business. And her business was to train CNA. So this is back in 2008, 2009, when the recession happened. So those of you remember that. And so the idea was, hey, let's get people in jobs that they can grow into and help agencies and nursing homes get staff. So for us, it was a win-win. So we opened up a community CNA program. And that since grew. Well, since I was bamboozled into becoming the COO of that company, what I discovered is that I liked building things and I loved being an entrepreneur. And so we took that business and we were in business up until 2020, right before the pandemic hit and the world shut down. We decided to close our company. My partners were ready to retire. And so I wasn't ready to retire, but they were. And so we closed that company and the world shut down. And it was the perfect time for me to really pitch my tent into what I'm doing now currently. Now, I had started my second business in 2015. But, working full time and having two businesses to run was a little lot. I don't recommend that. But for me, it was a very good way for me to do all the other things I was asked to do on the consulting side and things like that. And so when that business closed, we just moved right into our own business, and I was still able to see patients in the clinic via telehealth. And it was for us, as one of my mentors like to say, COVID happened, not just to me, but for me, because our business grew as people more interested in talking to you via Zoom and other technology. And suddenly everybody wanted to network, where before it's like pulling teeth to get anyone to network. So you can make it, adversity work for you or work against you. So it's your choice on how you look at it. So that was very helpful for us.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And so many people get sidelined just because they don't know what to do, so they don't do anything,
Well, it's very interesting because some of my older colleagues and mentors were suddenly like, how do you do this Zoom thing? Now, I had been doing it before because, time-wise, I didn't have time to actually physically go to a lot of things. So I was doing a lot of online networking. And so suddenly I became like the expert at online networking to help connect people, which has served me really well. And now that the world is open back up, I'm seeing a lot of people return to in-person events, which has been great because now I can do a hybrid of both. And I think it works really well. And people are still open to connecting online, but now they're even open to seeing people because during the pandemic, obviously, no one wanted to see anyone. You're like, oh, don't cough on me, don't breathe on me, And so it was a very interesting time.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that the world opened back up because networking in person feels different than doing it online. See, I liked Skype. Skype didn't grow as much as Zoom did, so now I do more on Zoom than I do Skype. But I really enjoyed Skype more than Zoom. But that was just me.
Well, what I loved about it is that during that time, I got to meet people I never would have met, right? So I found myself speaking to the CEO of a company that works in cancer care. He happened to be in Greece because he's from Greece, but he lives in the US because he was stuck there during the quarantine. And so we got to connect and talk and have these great conversations. And I never would have met him if it wasn't for the fact that we were all in quarantine and he was willing to hop on a Zoom call. And so I ended up meeting people from Australia and India and, New Zealand, everywhere, UK. And it's been so nice to connect with people internationally. But then when the world opened up, I looked around, I said, well, I have all these great connections across the world, but I don't know the business owner next door. So that's why I started doing more in-person networking so that I can get to know the people next door.
I'm going to say 95+% of the people I interact with are all online. Even when I go to networking events right now, it's typically the networking events of the people that I've interacted with online. They're not around my home. They're from a lot from Canada, from Europe somewhere, like you said, some from Australia, a few from New Zealand, not so many. But yeah, my business contacts they're not in my state. I mean, I've met a few, but not that I would call a core group. The core group is spread out.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of things that you can gain from that, having such an international group, because one thing I found out after talking to nurses from around the globe is that we all have the same problems. Understaffing, low wages, a lack of respect, safety concerns, all those things are universal. And so that really helped to inform how can we make changes and for the common good of all of nursing. And it's good to see that it's not just happening in the US, it's happening in Canada, it's happening in India, it's happening in China, even though they don't talk about it as much. It is happening everywhere, right? And so it's good to know that these things are going on so that you don't feel so isolated.
Exactly.
But then one of the great things I did is I joined a local, it's an online platform, but it supports small business. And so it helps you to really get to know the people in your neighborhood, right? And so I became an ambassador of this program so that I can meet business owners that are local to me. So I just had a new neighbor move into the building next to me in our business. And someone came to my door that I thought was for the new neighbor, but actually she came to see me. But it's a whole story about that. But I met the new neighbor and found out he's a retired nurse who's now making tables and chairs, building them, customizing them. And he's got his whole business doing that. And we had a conversation, just brief as it was, about 10 minutes. And I could feel the pain that he was experiencing as a nurse, former nurse, and what he went through with the pandemic and everything. But I'm like, how cool is it that I have a former nurse move next door to me who's a perfect person to talk to get on my show. And then also I may need some custom tables for my church. So I was like, this is a win-win. Cool. But I never would have thought that would have been right there in my backyard. Right. And so that personal connection, you are so right, of having those conversations and meeting people in person. So I encourage your listeners, if you haven't done an in-person networking event in a while, go find one, get your local chamber of commerce or something like that, and just go meet people. And as a person who is really introverted, believe it or not, I am an introvert. Me too. I now consider myself an ambivert, but that's a whole other story too, because I had to train myself to do it. But a few years ago, before the pandemic and everything, I looked around and I thought, I don't talk to anybody other than my patients and my husband. I really don't socialize. I don't go anywhere. I just stay in my room. And at that time, my office had no windows and I never knew even what time it was. So I made it my mission to go to one networking event. And my whole goal was just to meet 3 people and find out what they did. And then I could leave. That's all I had to do. So I didn't have to worry about having a big elevator pitch or anything like that. I could just go in and just meet people that I thought might be interesting, ask them what they did, and let them talk. And that got me out of feeling so shy and wanting to go in to talk to people. And I started attending again and again and again the same event, because I was in that event. I met another group, and I was in that group for a while. And while I was in that group, it got me into a big mastermind group. So you just going out there, I just say, just show up, because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I have multiple online groups that I network with that have different focus. And it's very interesting, because in my previous life, I was like in leadership positions. So the people at work didn't know that I was an introvert, because when I'm at work, I'm on. That's right. What I call it, right? Mm-hmm. But when I'm at home, I'm like,
yes,
my own little protected world where nobody comes in unless I choose that, Mm-hmm. But at work, it's a different situation. Just like here, I love interviewing people. I love that. But it's a different kind of interaction. But yes, every Friday, there's this group that it's just an open networking group, and everybody's got different backgrounds. But I knew about it for 3 weeks before I could force myself to actually show up the first time. And after the first time, it was easy, right? Mm-hmm. But back in the day, way back when, I'm going to say early 2000s, I was, you know who Tony Robbins is. He's got a
yes,
coaching program. So I was working with one of his coaches because I was going through some my mom had some health issues and I had some tension going on at work. Being in leadership, there's always tension and agendas and all this kind of stuff. And so I had a coach. And one of the things that she tasked me with doing, because, we had the introvert discussion, was just going to a store and having a conversation with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And just the thought of that was hard for me. Now, I had conversations at work all the time, but it's a different environment. And it was a comfort zone thing. You're used to being on at work, but being out in a place you've never been with people you don't know, that's a different, taking yourself out of your comfort zone just to see what happens, right? There is no downside to it. I mean, they have no control over your life. If it's a good conversation or a bad conversation, it's irrelevant. It's just you made the effort to speak first. It was very interesting that was hard for me. It was crazy.
One of the reasons why it's so hard is because in the work context, you know what you're going to talk about, right? You have an agenda.
Exactly.
Meeting somebody new, it's like, what's the agenda? So that's why I gave myself that little task. I had an agenda. So it was like, just find out what they do. That's all you have to do. And then just let it go. And it became easier and easier because what I found out is that a lot of people love to talk about themselves. So if you let
people love to talk about themselves.
Yeah, lead them in there and they'll just talk and talk and talk. And I let them do that. And I'm the person that will be in the grocery store and people will come up to me and just start talking to me and tell me their entire life story.
Wow.
I've been in restaurants and we were sitting to dinner and we're trying to listen to some music. We thought it was jazz night. It was rock night, wrong night. But anyway, the server came up and asked me, what I did. She was making small talk and I told her I was a nurse, a psychiatric nurse. And the next thing I know, we enter into a semi-counseling session right there. She said, and so this is where I discovered, okay, this is where my skills lie. And so you may have those instances if you're thinking about a business and you're not sure what to do, find out where your skills are and look at where things naturally come to you. And I'm pretty sure you'll find out where you're supposed to be. I remember in grade school, my grade card would say, Tina's a good student, but she talks too much, right? That was on all my grade cards. And then in high school, in college, I became a radio DJ. So I had my radio show, I had my FCC license, I had the whole nine, because you had to do it for class. And so I became a radio DJ and I had a show for a few years. And so one day I'm sitting here doing the podcast, and I'd done some interviews. I was doing some editing. And it just occurred to me that those skills that I learned in high school and college that I thought I was just doing for fun because I had nothing else to do was actually serving me later. And I thought, you know what? Nothing gets wasted. So go back and look at those skills that you never thought, would be anything, like it's something that's a hobby. And maybe use that as a way to understand how you function and how you work, and it will help lead you to where you're supposed to be.
Cool. Yeah, for me, my background was always, I'm drawn to anything related to music or nature or water. Very interesting stuff that I had a career that allowed me to travel because I'm all about new experiences. So my career allowed me to have new experiences all the time. It just suited me. I knew I'd have to get a job where I could travel and somebody else would pay for it because I'm not independently wealthy,
Right. Exactly.
So you have to figure out what you want and be focused on that. And then your brain helps you make choices that leads you towards that goal. But you got to figure out what it is that's a non-negotiable for you, right?
Exactly. Which is how I ended up into public speaking. I was like, yeah, Tina talks too much. I discovered I liked education and teaching, and I like seeing the light bulb go on. I like connecting with the audience. And so that really fills me up with energy. So I worked for a company. I would do continuing education training. They would fly me out. I'd do my training. And then lunchtime would happen. right? And we're supposed to come back and they would say, "Hey, let's sit down and lunch so I can pick your brain." And I'm like, no, I have to go and check out so I can get ready to drive to the next venue. But thanks for that. I was like, I need my buffer time
Yep.
before I come back and turn it back on. But I learned how to work through that. But doing that training, because I got a chance to travel around the country and do these trainings and see different things, it occurred to me that what I really liked was seeing that energy you get from the audience. So I can talk to a group of 1,000 people and be perfectly fine, but sometimes that one-on-one is still a little intimidating, and I had to work through that.
Yeah, same here. I have no problem speaking to huge groups. It's just not a fear for me like it is for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but when it comes to one-on-one with somebody I don't know, it's like, what do I even say? They don't care about me. Why should I,
Right.
And then there's other people who just have no filter. They just come in and start a conversation. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so not me.
I try to find one thing that I find interesting about that individual and start there. So I may say, you know what? I love your glasses. That's such an interesting color. Where do you get that done? And then the next thing you know, we have this whole conversation. One of my coaches that I was in a program and she suggested that we were trying to learn how to grow our social media. And she said, I want you to go join a group on Facebook on the book, right? And I want you to choose a group that has nothing to do with business, but something that you're interested in. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to join this group. So I said, I'm going to join a Buffy the Vampire Slayer Facebook group.
That's Dolly Parton, right? Isn't that Dolly Parton's? She's the executive producer or something for that.
Yes, yeah. So I joined the group. I find people that are my tribe. We start talking about the show and all this stuff and analyzing everything. And then that led me to join another group. And then I found a whole community of people that are around certain things that I like. And so I started joining other groups. And then before you know it, you're used to talking to the same people. We have conversations and I get to nerd out on things that I love without the pressure of having to, what do we have in common? I already know what we have in common. We particularly love this particular thing. Like there's a Bridgerton group that I'm in. Love it. And so there's a Game of Thrones group that I'm in. So the things that interests that I like. And then I started joining, business groups, obviously. But it's just nice to be able to talk to adults about things that you like that bring you together. And then you find out, oh, you also like cheese. You also like, this particular type of music. And that's what make those connections.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I like Stargate. So
okay, yes. Uh-huh.
I troll the Stargate groups and the Star Trek groups, those kind of things, sci-fi stuff.
Yep. I'm following that group. In fact, I'm doing my umpteenth rewatch of Star Trek Next Generation, and I
watch Star Trek every day. Every day. One of the TV stations that we have here has 5 hours, and it goes in order. It's the original series. It's next gen. All 5 of the series, the Star Trek series. They do them in order.
Wow. Yeah. So I made a Star Trek joke to my husband who didn't get it at all. He just had eye surgery.
Oh.
And he had his eye patch on. I said, "You look like you."
Oh yeah.
Or 7 of 9. He's like, "What?" I said, "Sorry, Next Generation."
Yeah. Like a Borg, what can you say?
Yep.
So is most of your work done online now or in person, or is it half and half?
It's kind of half and half. So a lot of the educational part that I do, the teaching, the TB and all of that, usually that's in person. I see CNA classes are hybrid, so there's some online and they have some in-person things that they have to do. But then for the coaching part, that can be done online anywhere. And what I teach is some of the startup things. What I found is that a lot of coaches are very good about basic business stuff, but when it comes to really niching down to healthcare, a lot of them don't understand the healthcare industry at all. And so, for example, I had a marketer say, well, yeah, why don't you go and say, if you give me business, I'll give you this or that. I said, yeah, you can't do that because that runs afoul of the Stark law and that's self, referral. And there's this anti-kickback thing. And they don't understand that this isn't how healthcare works. So because I understand healthcare, I thought, let me help the people that are my group, my tribe, right? Because I've been there and I don't want them to have to go through some of the pains that I did when I first started in business. In healthcare, we're not really trained in business. I got like one lecture on how to bill appropriately, that type of stuff. So you didn't really know all these different things. So it's learning how to do them, how to market, how to say things appropriately so that you won't get into regulatory trouble, legal trouble, or, you won't get your ideas taken or stolen. And, what does it mean about intellectual property and all those different things? So we talk about that in the course.
Yeah, that's a very important item to bring up, because if for business owners out there who have if there's any way the FCC can tie you to healthcare and say that you're practicing medicine without a license, that's a huge deal. Because I'm an energy healer, okay?
Yes.
And I have to be very careful. I cannot treat, I cannot diagnose, and I cannot even appear to be doing anything like that. Even if I'm not saying it overtly, I can't appear to be doing any of that. I work on your energy system. I don't work on your physical body. But I have to be very careful about how I encapsulate that so that it doesn't appear to violate any laws. And even way back when part of my job was we would set pay for civilians that work for the federal government. And when we would contact hospitals, we had to be very clear that we were not in violation of certain acts, legal laws that would cause the hospital to violate certain rules that they were held to. So it was very interesting when we would go to healthcare facilities.
It's one of the things that, as I work as a legal nurse consultant and I work with attorneys on their medical cases. And one of the things I've learned is that because I work as an expert witness, and this is what I had to explain to my branding coach and everything, I don't necessarily advertise that. Hey, hire me as an expert witness, right? You don't want to do that. Because you don't want to be seen as a hired gun. And my job is to be impartial. My job is to be balanced. My job is to tell you what's there or not there. No matter what side I'm working for, I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to tell you what's there, okay, or what's not there. And so having people understand that and a little bit different on how you market. You market, but you don't advertise and put up flyers. And I was trying to explain that to some people that are like, hey, it'd be great if you put us on a billboard at our golf course and attorneys play there. I said, yes. And you know what they'll say? Yeah, we've seen her billboard. And it'd come up in court. Trust me, they would take a picture of it and put it up there. So yeah, there's a reason why I do what I do the way that I do. And not anybody that doesn't work in healthcare would not understand that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. You have to have, like I said, I'm not in the healthcare field at all. I'm not trained. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a doctor. I have no medical, well, other than CPR training. I have that.
There you go. Thank you. I'm glad everybody should have CPR training. Yes.
Yeah. But I have to be aware of some of the legal restrictions around that industry just because there could be a perceived tie, right?
Yes.
Even as far as HIPAA stuff, and what I keep in my notes and what information I collect, all that kind of stuff. That's a big deal. So for energy workers out there listening, if you have not had any legal training on what you should or should not say, what you should or should not put in your advertisements, in your questionnaires, in your marketing, you might want to consider that sooner rather than later, because that's a pretty big deal. You don't want to have any charges filed against you or have your business shut down for violating medical requirements. practicing medicine without a license. I don't want any part of that.
And I have to say, as a person who is in network marketing and part of a network marketing company as well, but I hear that a lot from people who are in network marketing, and they have to be very careful about the claims that they make about their products.
Yep.
This is important. You can't say that, oh, well, so-and-so had diabetes and they took our product and now they don't, right? You have to be very careful. If there's no evidence, randomized scientific trials that says this treats that and the FDA approves it and says that treats it, you can get into trouble. And there's several network marketing companies that have gotten in trouble because they have people telling them things that they shouldn't. The same way in the pharmaceutical industry. I don't know, back in the 90s, when the medication came out, the big, I won't call its name just because I don't want them to be mad at me, but one of the big pain pills came out, right? And I remember I was working as a staff nurse and nursing supervisor on the psychiatric unit and the addictions unit. And the rep would come to the hospital and say, make sure you give them this pain medicine because it's got a special coating on it and they can't get addicted. Well, I don't know if you've seen that Netflix special about that very issue, but they were actually telling them to do that. And it came back to bite them. They got sued, majorly sued. The government, several states sued them, tried to put the family in jail, all this stuff because they were giving misinformation about their product. So you never want to make a claim that you can't back up in court.
Yep.
So, speak on it as education. Individual results may vary. This has helped some with this particular issue, may not help you, but you have to be very careful about that. You don't want someone to say, well, you told me to do this and it'll cure my cancer. And now I have stage 4 cancer. You don't want that to happen. And I, even as a nurse practitioner, I have to be careful about what I say because I'm not giving medical or legal advice to anyone. And I let them know that I do education. You need to speak to your individual provider that knows you, that's going to evaluate you and see you. I'm not going to tell you this pill or this treatment or that treatment, it's better than the other. I do a lot of complementary therapy treatments as well. And so I tell them, this may help you. Tapping is one of them. I talk about breathing exercises and guided imagery on the wellness side. These are things that you do in conjunction with seeing your therapist. I'm not your therapist in my wellness part of my business that has nothing to do with my clinical practice. Is it no medications? We're talking about what you can do for your own body and your own mind. So it's wellness based. We're not diagnosing you with anything. You want that, you go back to your therapist and your doctor. You see your psychiatrist. That's not what I do here in this practice. Now, the other practice, that's a whole different story. And I make sure they understand that I'm not diagnosing you or anything like that. And it's all in your disclosures. If you don't have an attorney, there's great services out there. I have a service that I can refer your listeners to if you want that really would help them in the United States, Canada. You can do that and ask them those questions. I happened to talk to the very first nurse psychotherapist in Canada.
Oh, wow.
She started her show. And one of the things she said, her business, what she said was she has to make sure that on everything she's a nurse psychotherapist. By regulation, she has to let them know she's a nurse. So if you're an NP here in the US, a lot of times there's a big fight about whether or not, especially if you have your doctorate, if you can call yourself Dr. So-and-so in the clinical setting. Now, psychologists can get away with it. Pharmacists can get away with it. Other people. But for some reason, they want to make sure that the person knows you're seeing a nurse and not a physician. And so there was a nurse in California that got into legal trouble because of that and had to pay a hefty fine for that and almost lost her practice because of it.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that I also mentor less experienced, I call them younger healers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I push is, in addition to that, we don't diagnose, we don't treat, we don't use medical terms. If you've got some pain in your head versus saying, whatever, So we have to be more generic when we talk. But the other thing that I tell my clients is that I don't get in the middle of you and your doctor. Whatever that is whatever that is. Now, if we work together, what I might suggest is you have your doctor look and see if your medications should change, because that's important.
Yes.
And I'm not the person to do that. But if your prescriptions should lessen, or, the dosage should be higher, that's for your doctor to figure out. So you need to be upfront and say, well, this is how I'm feeling and this is what has changed for me, right? But I don't get in the middle of any of that stuff. That's not my world. My world is, honestly, it's getting your head in the right place and getting your body balanced and retrained to know that it's created to heal. If you cut your hand and keep the cut clean, your hand will heal. Now, if you keep putting dirt in it, it's going to get infected and you're going to have to go to the doctor, right?
Yes.
But your body was created to heal, but we've lost that. A lot of times we've lost the trust in our body to do what it was designed to do. And we want that instant fix, some kind of pill, some kind of something, when if maybe we waited a couple days, that cold might just heal on its own. But no, I've got a sniffle, so I need to run to the doctor to get a pill. Well, do you really? Or is that a convenience?
Well, what I find interesting is that when you talk about the focus on medication, and I never tell anyone to stop a medication without talking to their provider. However, I used to teach the drug ed classes for teenagers. And I brought up an old movie. I know I'm dating myself, but the movie Fright Night. And there's a scene in Fright Night where Charlie thinks the vampire is coming after him, and he screams, and his mom runs in, and he doesn't want to tell her about the vampire. So he goes, yeah, I just had a nightmare. And she goes, oh, do you want a Valium? Like, who gets a Valium for a nightmare, right? Or in the movie with Elle Woods, Legally Blonde, Warner breaks up with her. Her friends are trying to comfort her. And she's like, I'm going to go to law school. And they're like, can't you just take a Percocet? That is our answer. Let's cover it up. Let's get rid of the symptoms. Let's not deal with it at all. Let's just make it all better as fast as we can. And I tell people sometimes it's not going to be that quick fix.
Yeah.
You have to go through the thing, especially when I'm talking about grief. And because I work with people with mental health issues, I have this conversation of, okay, well, your dad just died like a month ago. You should be sad. It's okay. This isn't your mental illness. This is grief. This is a bad thing that happened. And it's okay to feel sad and have crying spells occasionally and things like that. You're going to do that. That's normal grieving. Now, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, and you're still doing that every day, that's a problem. And so I teach them, you have to experience your emotions and know what they are so that you'll know, hey, this is outside of normal for me, right? So if you're, as one of my patients would say, flying and she's manic and she's really high and she's manic. And I said, okay, now where are you in this phase? I mean, are you on the moon? Because that means you're really manic. Or is it you're anxious, something's going on because you got a traffic ticket and now you got to pay this ticket, right? That's normal anxiety. Everybody would be anxious about something like that. You get pulled over, see the flashing lights. That's normal anxiety. But if you go from there to the moon, that might be mania. So, so helping them to understand what those emotions are and how to recognize them and how they manifest in their body. I had a younger client on the wellness side, and he had a lot of test anxiety. And so we did a lot of mind-body work. I said, well, where do you feel the tension in your body so that you'll know that this is stress-related and how to then bring yourself back down? And so we did a lot of stuff like that. So he can identify, okay, when I start to tense my shoulders, when my jaw gets tight, I'm feeling anxious. And then he's able to then use his coping skills to deal with the anxiety and say, okay, I'm anxious. What's causing me the anxiety? Oh, I have this test to take, but I prepared for this right? So we said, well, you study for the test, you prepared for it. I gave him a little mantra to use, that type of thing. He did so much better.
Cool. Yeah, and that's a lot of really what the energy work is there's something that one of the techniques I utilize called the peace process, where they get all anxious and like, okay, where do you feel that in your body? It's very interesting that you use those words because those are the exact words I use. Oh, well, my jaw is tight. Well, find that and focus on just that feeling. And then we allow that feeling to be there. And they recognize that it's just a feeling. It's not going to come up and it's not going to cut their head off. It's just a feeling. Allow yourself to feel the feeling. Because so often we don't think that's okay. We want to be right all the time and we want to be perfect all the time. And we don't want to ever be upset, because that's the way on TV it looks that way. Well, no, that's not the way humans work. Humans get angry. Humans get sad. Humans feel grief, and grief comes in waves. That's another thing I tell people all the time. Grief comes in waves. Even 6 months from now, you may get hit with a very big wave, and that's okay. Not every day, but sometimes it's going to feel like just a little bit of old ocean waves on your ankles, and other times it's going to be a huge wave that knocks you down, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. As long as you stand back up and you recognize it and you go on. That's what's important, is to understand that it's okay as long as you keep moving.
I recently did a talk with a group of women at a women's conference, and I said, okay, it's Saturday morning. You guys been sitting here. You're ready for lunch. So I get to do the wellness piece, right? Right before lunch. And I said, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about quantum physics and quantum psychology on a Saturday morning. And they're like, instantly, oh my gosh, she's not going to do that. I said, yes, we are. So I taught a little bit about quantum physics and how to shift your mood.
Cool.
And I share with them this story of an experience that I had. I was riding a high. I mean, I had a great day. All my meetings were just popping. Everybody was positive. I had spoken with my family group, and they were like, yeah, this is awesome. You're great. You rock, right? And then I had a what I thought was a networking call with another coach. And so I'm just telling her about what I'm doing and all this stuff. And she goes, well, you're doing too much. And I would have told my clients that you don't need to do this or this or this or this or this. You need to focus on one thing. And I'm like, lady, I just talked to you for 10 minutes, right? Never met her before. So immediately I felt I got off this call. She said, well, let's talk again tomorrow. And da-da-da-da. So she set an appointment for tomorrow. And I got off the phone call and like my energy just dropped. I mean, to the ground. And I'm like, what happened? What just happened? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm like, how did my mood shift? And I realized it was that conversation. And so I was thinking it through because, people pleaser, reformed people pleaser Tina would have kept the appointment the next day. But I said, no, I don't think I need to keep this appointment. I'm just going to politely decline and then block her because I don't need that negative energy. And so I realized that, and then I shifted my mood back and, went back to where I was. It took me about 30 minutes or so, but I recognized, mood shift, and before I wouldn't have recognized it, but I'm like, oh, no, this is not good. So I shared that experience with the audience and I played a little session with them. And what I did is I started out with some music. You talked about music, and I love using music for this. And so I shared some music that was kind of low vibrational energy. I said, okay, now I want you to close your eyes. I want you to listen to this music. So I chose things like the theme from Jaws. So then I had put on some sad music about, missing your mom and all this stuff. So I brought their energy low. I put them in low vibrational energy. I said, so I want you to understand your feelings and your emotions listening to this song as we go through. And I played just little short snippets. Then as we went along, I started slowly raising it to kind of like a moderate level, more positive. And then by the time we got done, I had them dancing and laughing, right? And I said, this is something that you can do on your own. Take this exercise with you. And when you feel that energy shift, know that you can shift your music. And I had to tie it to something that you would understand, which is music And I said, there's your lessons in quantum psychology in 20 minutes on a Saturday morning.
Yep. Yeah, music is a very good example of vibration, right?
Yes.
I use the radio example sometimes, where your body's in balance. You're listening to the radio, you're singing along to your favorite song, and then you go around a corner and there's a high rise blocking the sound, and you've lost the song and it's all staticky. And so you're singing along anyway, but you're not really singing to anything because you have nothing on the radio. And then you go around the next corner and the song is back, and now you're happy again. And the body works the same way. When you hold on to negative emotional stuff and you don't allow yourself to feel it and process it out the way your body was created to work, it's like you lost the song and your body's out of balance. And then when you allow your body to process this emotional stuff, your perfect vibration comes back, your song comes back, and you feel like yourself again. But vibration is just like that. Emotions have different vibrational, I'll call them megahertz, right?
Yes.
That kind of thing. Just like sad music makes you move more slowly and your shoulders come down, and, then you get really happy, joyous music and your shoulders go back and your face lights up and you sing. It's a different vibrational reaction of your body to the music, to emotion.
That sadness is important too. And I want to, don't skip over that.
Exactly.
There's a time and a place for the sadness. And that's one of the great things. What is that movie? Oh gosh, what is the name of that movie? It just came out, the little cartoon. Anyway, where they have Riley, the little girl, has all the emotions and everything. I can't think of the name of the movie at the moment, but it's a Disney movie. But I love that movie because it teaches kids and some adults not to forget about some of our emotions, like anxiety, and how anxiety can help us in some places. It kind of be like our first little
like a yellow light, right?
Yes.
It's like a yellow light. There might be danger here. Pay attention. It may be okay, but there may be danger here.
Right. I'm gonna remember that movie in a minute. I always have like rain for it. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's important to feel the negative just as it is to feel the positive. But it's also important to notice when you get stuck feeling more negative and don't shift yourself to the positive, because that's when you can have some awareness that maybe there's something going on internally and maybe I need help, or maybe I just need to change my physiology, right? Maybe I need to listen to some more happy music instead of sad music, right? Or upbeat music instead of dark music. So just an awareness, self-awareness.
Yes.
Trigger possibly.
Yes.
I know we've talked about a whole lot of stuff, but we're running out of time here. How can people get in touch with you? You've got some resources for people. Talk to us about how people can find you and work with you.
Yes, so they can find me. They can find me at the NurseSharkAcademy.biz. That's the NurseSharkAcademy.biz, and they can find some of the resources that we have available. There's a couple of videos that are there for you. And we have our gratitude journal. That's another big thing. I just did a 30-day gratitude challenge where I went live on Instagram for 30 days just to say what I'm grateful for.
Wow.
And so out of that, I developed the gratitude challenge, which kind of talks about our 10 B attitudes, the attitudes that we need in leadership. And so this is just a great starter for you. So you can always get that as well with the promotion. And then just hit me up there. Website's the best. Or you can follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, Threads. And now Blue Sky. Yes.
Yeah, keeping up with all the name changes and the new platforms is like, oh my goodness, where are we today?
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me here today.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah. Do you happen to have any final thoughts for our listeners? I know we covered so much.
I'm going to say this. I recently had a conversation with a friend, and she's struggling in her business right now. And so maybe that could be you. Maybe, it's the end of the year, things are happening. Just don't give up. Reevaluate, take a step back and look at where you've come, because I think sometimes we miss the goal because we're focused on so many things that are happening around us. So take a step back, reevaluate. Sometimes you have to pivot. We had to do that during the pandemic, right? We had to pivot. So we learned that. But sometimes you just have to realign with your goals. And so if you do those things, I'm sure you'll get to where you want to go.
Cool. So thank you so much for spending your time with me. And my listeners, thank you for spending your time with me. I know you have so many podcasts out there that you can listen to. And I'm very grateful that you've chosen to spend your time with me. And we drop new episodes every Tuesday. So come back again for another fantastic guest. I really enjoy these conversations. I learn something new every time. And I find people that I want to continue being friends with. So hopefully you're finding the same and finding value in what we put out for you. So thanks to Tina for being here. Thanks to the listeners. And I'm going to leave it right there. This is your host, Jean Border, with the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey podcast. Until next time.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey podcast. Energy work to better your business, hosted by energy healer Jean Border. Remember to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey.